Who the hell is Baby Carrot?
Not me.
I'm glad to hear that. Oh, Baby Carrot. Okay. Baby Carrot. In line. Makes me happy. Makes me sublime.
Recording in progress.
Baby. Testing. That's me. Oh, I don't know yet. And, you know, they're a family of young, so they're both, she's active duty, he's retired. He's a veteran. Yeah, but he's young. Yeah. Still working, works out of the house, so that's something to know, because probably could stand like a loft area or another bedroom. Mhm. The, yeah, I figured it would, and, yeah, that's awesome. Is that start at what, 299 or what? Oh. Yes.
Thank you.
Right, okay. Okay. Michael Files. Mm-hmm. Cool. They're excited, and she's really glad that, I've got experience selling new homes, and because that's pretty much what they want. And I said, well, I've sold about 8 or 9 of them to veterans, especially in the last 2 years, so 12 to 30 to their apartments at Colfax, it's right by the Veterans Hospital out there. I'm gonna meet with them at the lobby at their condo, and then ahead of time, I may say, would you guys like to run out to look at anything later? Because she has Mondays off, other than that, she's 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 at night. Yeah, and off on weekends, so I can. I don't care, well, let me play it by ear here in the next day or so. I don't want to script your day unless it's worthwhile, but it might be worthwhile Monday. Okay, good. Okay. Get something. Good. Okay. I'll see what I can figure out. Okay. Okay. Huh? Okay, very good. Yeah. Okay, thank you, dear. See you. Bye. Okay. Caesar, can you hear me? Perfect.
Yep.
I gotta turn the volume up a little bit. Let's see, we'll wait just another couple minutes and see if a few more people show up. The important people, right? Volume is up. Okay. Have you had any showings or anything, Caesar?
Not right now. Right now I'm just kind of building my connections with the home builders. So I have a couple meetings this weekend with Oakwood Homes and some other builders just so I can see some of their model homes, just so I can start kind of like advertising them through my social media. So
Good for you. Kevin,
super
welcome.
excited.
Maybe he can't hear you yet. Hi, Kevin, welcome to the class.
Good morning.
And you guys can just leave your microphones on if you want to, because we'll try to interact. I'm gonna do, basically, I don't know if you saw the Facebook this morning, but I'm mainly gonna just cover on inspections. And what to kind of look for when you go to show homes, and then what you're going to maybe come across when you do a, have something under contract and you go to inspection. Valerie is checking up on me. Okay. Hi, Val.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Happy New Year to
I'm
everybody.
good too. Yeah.
We'll wait like another minute or two because we usually have people come in about 5 after. Any questions that anybody has on anything before we get started? Had any weird things happen at any kind of walkthrough or inspection? There's usually something that happens. I'm gonna share a couple of screens real quick. Let's see. Host disabled. I'm not disabled. Quit. Oh, man. I need your daughter's help.
Hi, Valerie.
It says host is disabled. What do I need to do? Because I'm trying to share the screen. I know, laugh at me. Everybody's a jerk.
I wish you could help.
See? So is it something up there? Okay. Oh, I didn't do multiple,
Are you sharing your,
huh? Now I can. Perfect. I'm assuming you guys, well, can you take that off?
what up? The sidebar?
No, I'm not sharing that one. I don't know what that is. My screen is not sharing.
Your screen is sharing.
See? It's just sharing the Zoom. Sharing that, it's not sharing.
Hit stop sharing.
Okay.
Hit share screen.
Choose this. Doesn't do that, huh? And then I have some other things to share. There it is. That's what I wanted to share. The screen here.
I know, I understand.
There we go. Kathy, hi there. I thought I'd just show a couple of interesting things. One is on a listing and one, this home I just drove by this morning. I think it needs roofing. Which is not uncommon, but one thing you'll notice here when you look at this roof, it does not have any vents on top. And so a lot of times what happens is people will put roofing on themselves and they don't think about the vents that should be installed. And the roofing will basically just cook on top of there. And although this has probably been on there a long time, it doesn't have any correct venting to help it, so it alleviates that heat buildup. So I just thought I'd show you a picture of that one. And then I was showing houses about a week and a half ago in Littleton. And this was the next door neighbor's house. And that is a shake shingle roof. Obviously has not been replaced, I bet, since the house was built, which was in the early 90s. Yeah, and we used to see some of the crazy things we used to see. You used to be able to put multiple layers of roofing on a house. And people would actually put asphalt shingles on top of a wood shaped shingle roof. And fortunately, no longer can you have more than one layer of roofing. So anytime a roofing is replaced, you must take off the old roofing and put on the new roofing. Whether that includes the asphalt felt that goes on, or if it's just has to go down to the wood and have new felt put on and then new shingles put on. But, and you'll see that, you know, this is kind of off whack, but that roofing is bad. Obviously. Then this roofing is actually on a house I'm going to be listing. And this is a roofing you don't typically see much anymore. This is called wood bridge or wood roof shingles, and there was a class action lawsuit on this type of roofing years ago. This is a man-made kind of a fiber. It looks like a wood shake shingle, but you can see the moss is growing out of there and it's delaminating. It's pretty ugly. This house is going to be sold as is. It's an estate sale, and they didn't do hardly anything to this house at all. But if you see this you can kind of see the grooves in the shingle itself, which shows that it's a man-made type of shingle, not the wood, and it's much more regimented as far as how it's put on the roof, whereas when you look at the shake shingle, it's staggered. and curling up. And this roof, like I said, is probably 30 years old, if not more.
Hey, Bob, would a roofer charge more to remove those two types of roofing
Yes.
than they would just a shake?
Yep,
Asphalt shake.
absolutely. I don't know what they charge per square, like 3 by 3 feet, but it's definitely more because it's more laborious to take that roofing off. Or if they have multiple layers. But, yeah, you'll probably, and shake is always more expensive to take off because there's nails that are all over the place. They usually, on a roof this old, they're probably gonna have to take it down to the wood and they'll have to put on, they will take it down to the wood and put on new felting, which is the black type of asphalt roll that you'll see on roofs before they put shingles on. But it's definitely, it's seen its day. I already
That was a
got,
requirement in our that was a requirement to have shake shingles in our community way back in the day. There
right,
wasn't a lot of them, I think.
and now they allow you to do the asphalt shingles that kind of look similar to it. And they're a fire hazard. There's a fire hazard right here because of all these needles and stuff.
Now,
But, I already got a bid from my roofer because since we're selling this as is, we've already done all of the work prior to listing it. I had the sewer scoped, which we have a good sewer line. I had the roofing, we knew it was gonna need replaced. I didn't want an investor coming along and say, well, it's gonna be $50,000 to replace this roofing. So my roofer already did a bid for us, and I think it was 25 to replace this roof, so that I know that when we get offers, I don't have people trying to tell me that it's gonna be a lot more expensive than that, thusly, that's their offer, why they're so low. I also had a structural engineer look at the house, and there are some issues with it, but it's really for a early 70s home, it's really not in bad shape, it just needs work, and it needs to be updated. But anyway, I thought you guys might enjoy seeing that. And then, let's share something different. Let's see here. Let's see. I've got inspections that we can go through. So how many of you guys have not been on an inspection? Kevin, have you been on? Okay, you've not been on one, Valerie? No? You don't go? I have learned more about showing a house by going to inspections than anything else, just because I've learned over the years what they talk about and everything. So I think it might be good for you, especially before you go. I go to every inspection that my people have, and or I send somebody if I can't be there, just to help kind of buffer in case there's some issues that come up and they're kind of worried about things. But let me see, I'm just gonna pull up some different ones here, and it takes it a minute to load.
I've been on the other side of inspections, Bob, for my house and for
Well, that should
same
be
thing.
that.
I pass it away.
You take good care of your house, right?
Right.
So, one of the first things I look at when I'm showing is the electrical panel outside. I a lot of times do that before I even go show. I'll try to, in an older home, I'll try to look at the panels as close as I can from the MLS photos. A notoriously bad electrical panel is called the Federal Pacific. There's another one called the Lemsco, but Federal Pacific are very, very common, especially here in Arvada and in Denver, in areas where homes were built in the 50s and 60s. And they usually will have their logo on the front, or when you open up the panel inside, it'll say Stab Lock Breakers, and it'll say the Federal Pacific. They're notoriously bad for the breakers sticking and causing fires. And so if you're showing and you know that up front, you know that you have a potential problem that could come up in the inspection, and every inspector worth their anything are going to mention that this is a problem and you may want to consider it being replaced. Now, in the market we had 2 years ago, a seller would just tell you, "Peh, you can replace it, I'm not doing anything to it." In the market we just have been in and maybe we're kind of starting to come out of, people are able to get the panels replaced a lot of times, or they're able to get at least some credit so they can maybe get a panel replaced. On a condo like this, and we didn't have to have this replaced, I'm just showing it, but on a condo like this, it's probably a $3,000 job. On a good sized home, it's probably a $6,000 or $7,000 job. Okay? Any questions?
I just got a
Yep.
quote on I guess it's about a 1,500 square foot home,
Uh-huh,
and it was 4,300.
43, okay.
Hey, Bob, would they necessarily replace the whole outside case if they were redoing these, or would they just do the break? Can they do just the breakers? Replace just
No, they
the,
have to do the entire panel. And sometimes they have to put in a new mast. The mast is the pole up on top that brings the wires. If there's poles and they're bringing the electricity in from a high power line or whatever, the mast has to be a certain height up off the ground. In older homes, you'll even find it that they came in under the roofing, under the eaves of the roof. But they should, if they have a mast, it should be a certain height so people can't jump up and grab the line, right? So, yeah, they don't just replace breakers, they will replace the whole panel. And it's a good idea. If you have a 50 or 60-year-old panel, you might as well get everything updated and know it's safe.
Right.
Now, in this particular one, this one thing we did ask for is there was some rust on this breaker, which could cause it to not trip correctly. So we asked an electrician just go through the breaker and make sure everything was functional and replace anything that needed to be, and they replaced 3 of the breakers. Okay. Let's see. This is a 100 amp panel. It just shows you how the line comes in. And you know, you always hear, well, we don't want aluminum wiring in our house. Well, there's always an aluminum service that comes into the panel. That's what this braided line is here. And you'll even see there's some corrosion on there. But that's not that uncommon because breaker panels are oftentimes sitting outside. But this aluminum is not the aluminum wiring in a house that you might see in the 50s and 60s. The other thing that became an issue in this house was we had, oops, I gotta go back in. Sorry about that, guys. This thing is a little touchy. We had to have GFI circuits or plugs put into the kitchen, which anytime that you have a plug around the sink, within 6 feet, there does have to be a GFCI type of outlet. That's the ones that have the little push button. And this plug over here and this plug here did not have that, so we asked for that to be installed, and they did. Or it's something that your buyer could install if they feel comfortable with after closing. They're about $20 a piece. You just simply open it up, take out the old plug, put in the new one with the correct wiring, of course, and you're all set. But that's a very common issue that you see in bathrooms and kitchens, that they don't have GFCI, which trips in case there's any moisture that you're working at the sink and something happens and you don't want to be shocked to death.
Do you know if they allow the GFCI in series?
Do what now?
If they're set up in series, do they require not every plug, even though it's set up in a series?
I think I think it's different with different municipalities, but usually they are in a series. And sometimes what's weird about GFCIs is you may have the GFCI in the kitchen, but it's tripped if it trips, it'll trip there and it may trip another one upstairs.
Yeah, no, I've seen, that's just what I'm wondering, because I
Yeah.
just was in the kitchen, there was one in the end, but it tripped the entire.
The entire, yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's supposed to necessarily, but it can.
And that's okay or not, it just depends on the
It's-
city.
Yeah, everybody has their thoughts on that. Most electricians will say no. They don't want it to trip the whole thing. So. This is down in a crawl space, which most of us never see even when we're showing. But just for your knowledge, if you're in a basement that doesn't have dirt, but it's concrete, and you see this white powdery substance, this is called efflorescence, and efflorescence is caused when moisture breaks down the minerals in the concrete from maybe being moist most of the time. And you can see some efflorescence out here in the dirt. This is pretty common that a lot of times the crawl spaces are not, they're not sufficiently dried out and they don't have visqueen or plastic down on top of the dirt. So that was one thing they asked for, and the seller did it. The seller was actually an investor. And he was actually pretty darn nice about fixing the numerous items that we had. There wasn't a lot, but yeah, he was good about it. We also had, in this one, we had a break in the main water line out here that they didn't realize that it was dripping water, and you can kind of see that it's a little bit different look there because it had probably been dripping a long time. Had a broken switch to go down into the crawl space, not a big deal. And like I said, these are oftentimes things you're not gonna see because you don't typically go down in the crawl space, do you, Valerie? No, I don't. So here is a sump pump or sump pit. And what this does is you have clear around the whole exterior of the foundation, you have a French drain. And the French drain drains towards this pit. And if you have a typically amount of moisture that every so often it builds up, this is the pump, and it's kind of like a toilet valve. And once the water reaches a certain level, it trips the pump and the pump turns on, and then it pumps it outside. This line goes up and exits somewhere out the house. Once in a while, you'll find in these sump pits that the seller or somebody has plumbed this exiting water into the water system, which is totally illegal. You can't have this pipe drain into the water system and then go exit from there, because they don't want this water getting into the public water. It just goes up and outside and exits outside somewhere, okay? So it shouldn't exit into the water system. And if you do have radon, they will oftentimes use this pit, and they'll maybe drill another hole in here and put the pipe down in there and have it go down into the ground for radon mitigation. Let's see, water heater was fine. There was a few connections. This was not connected the way it was supposed to be, which you're not gonna see things like that in a crawl space, but in a basement, you are. There was a leak at this, which is common. You know, if nothing else, you guys, you learn a lot of things by going to these inspections and just listening. Okay, here's a furnace in a crawl space. So why is it laying on its side? It's not because it fell over. It's actually supposed to be on its side and can be on its side in order to fit downstairs, because if you turned it up on end, it would be too tall. So oftentimes you will see them laying on their side. Everything was fine with this one. This is the line coming in for the air conditioner, and it's always insulated like that. Let's see what else we got. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, sometimes you might see in a house, you'll have an open stairway that you can you can pull down a string and open up the attic access. And this is in a two-story condo, which is kind of unusual, but they have the access there. And you could actually, this is the whole area up there. Now, a lot of people say, well, can I store a bunch of stuff up there? You really shouldn't be storing anything heavy up there. You could put maybe a piece of plywood down on top of the insulation and maybe put some light Christmas decorations or whatever, but you don't want to put a bunch of heavy weight on that on top of the trusses. So, but that's kind of a different thing that you don't typically see. But of course, the inspector will check up in the attic, make sure the insulation depth, make sure there's not been any intrusion by animals. Because every so often, a raccoon or squirrels get in there and they raise havoc in there. I once had a house I did in Aurora. We had, we figured somewhere around 15 raccoons that were living up there. And when the inspector opened it up, he about came off his ladder because they came charging at him, which is not fun. This is a condo sold this year up in Fort Collins. Didn't have a lot of things, but this is a typical panel inside a condo. It's a little typically smaller. This was not a bad panel. It's just, he took a picture of it, took a picture of inside the wire. And you'll see here that the name of this panel is a Square D, a very good manufacturer of panels. And you'll see Square D oftentimes now, a lot of builders are using Square D panels. So it's a good one. Federal Pacific, Alenisco again are not so good.
Didn't Square D though just have a recall, like a big recall?
Yeah, I think they did have a recall, which if you're around long enough, they just recalled 200,000 Teslas.
Yeah.
Yeah, or whatever it is. So this is typical what a good panel will look like inside. This is just some excess paint or whatever we were spackling when they did it. But you'll notice that the wires are not bent and they're not in a sharp angle. They're kind of looped. And a good panel will have more of a curve to the wires when they come in. They try not to bend them at a 90-degree angle, but that's a good panel. You're not going to see that when you show it because you don't take off the cover, obviously. This condo did not have, or this did have a GFCIs. Actually, this was a very good little unit up there. Really nothing other than, this is something that's common. You'll see that when people paint, when they hire somebody, they don't cover the alarms, and they'll just spray paint over them. Or they'll texture over them. And immediately there's moisture in there and they are not gonna function correctly. Yeah, so if you're showing houses and you see that, I just showed a house a couple months ago in Littleton, 950,000, it was a fix and flip. And every single one of the smoke alarms and CO alarms were spray painted. Which is just unbelievable to me. They probably put 150,000 in the house. And they didn't do anything about putting new smoke detector alarms, and people still bought it. Another thing to note when you're walking through, have you ever noticed that the alarms are maybe yellowish in color? That is a very good indication that they're older. You can kind of see in this one that it's where they didn't spray paint, it's a little bit yellowish looking. And this is an older alarm. So my people were just glad to get this one, and they said, we'll put in new alarms and we'll do everything. The only thing they asked for was a credit on the fireplace. So this is the floor of the fireplace and it's cracked. And then I gotta go back out and come back in. And then the metal on the frame around the fireplace was pretty, pretty, I would say just out of sorts. It wasn't square inside, and obviously flames could impact and cause, back in here, could cause fire to escape out the metal part of it. So when you have a wood burning fireplace, a lot of times you want to make darn sure that they do inspect the fireplace, and you may want to hire separately from the inspector, you may want to hire a chimney sweep or a company that looks at the flue and making sure that everything is solid up through there. I know up in Evergreen, like where Valerie is, there's a lot of fireplaces, and you really want to make sure if the people are using the fireplaces a lot, that you get it looked at. They can put cameras down in the chimney and they can inspect them and make sure that you have a safe fireplace. Because there can be an issue with that, or not a huge buildup of creosote, which is a problem in and of itself. If you get a house that's got that buildup, you get a fire going, and all of a sudden you get a flash fire that comes out of the fireplace. Pretty common, nothing wrong with the hot water heater. There was just a little bit of issue there with some moisture collecting, not a big deal. Again, the smoke detectors. And that was about it for that one. Let's see, let's go down. This is a brand new home, and yes, I get inspections done and I pay for inspections for my clients on new homes, because there's never been a new home that I've had inspected that didn't have something wrong. And another thing, when you're doing a walkthrough on a home with the builder, do they ever go up inside the attic and show you the attic? No. And there's a builder in particular that I sold, and that's the last time I sold their homes, was the third house in a row of theirs, that there was no insulation in the ceiling upstairs. Yeah. So how did that happen? I don't know, but they were all in Aurora and they were all the same builder. So it's another reason to have it inspected. They may find little things, and good builders will take care of things. So here's the inspector. He went in and did the inspection, and lo and behold, he found a host of about 8 things, all minor. But this house did have a sewer line that had a piece of 2x4 in it. So they cleaned that out for us, and they were fine with it. All builders should be fine with anything that you find and want to touch it up or fix it. Overall, this house was in very good shape, but like I said, it had a few minor things. Sometimes they miss things with flashing. This should have some metal flashing over it. Whatever. Let's see. I don't remember what that was. This was a little bit off here with the insulation on this. They fixed that. There's a newer panel, obviously a brand new panel, much larger. And when you get into newer homes, you're going to see that they not only have breakers, they also have these little switches on them for arc fault. So in bedrooms, and now I think it's pretty much every room, they have arc fault breakers, which means that if something just sparks in a outlet, it will trip the breaker. Because a normal breaker would not just trip maybe from a little bit of a, more or less like a shock inside of a pan or a plug or a light switch. But with the arc fault, it will trip it and shut it down immediately. And it used to be that was only, it had to be in bedrooms. Now it's true pretty much every room.
You're totally pain in the butt.
That's just, why, do you have a problem?
Like vacuum cleaner, blender, I mean, you name it, it'll set them off.
It'll set them off, huh?
Yeah.
Maybe you just use too much electricity. So, yeah. There was a couple, this light switch wasn't working correctly, they replaced the light switch. So he found, like I said, I think there was 8 things that he found with this home that we really probably would not have found had we not had an inspection if we just did a walkthrough, okay? But it's also good for the buyer because they have this inspection report that they can go back to. The inspector explains things to them, and then they get a second time, they get explanation from the builder when they do their walkthrough prior to going to close, or typically a week before closing. But it just shows everything about it and gives them good information. Okay. Let's go to another one. Any questions on anything so far, you guys? No? Is that because I'm doing a great job, or is that because you already know it all? You know it all, come on. Let's see, let's go. Oh, this will be a good one, because my people actually backed out of this one. And I'll show you the main reason why. My old partner used to live in this patio home right next door, so he was kind of, thought it was interesting that I was showing and had this place under contract, but like I said, we didn't go through with it. These have roof tiles on them. This is an older patio home complex right over by Indian Tree Golf Course around 78th and Wadsworth on the west side. But the roofing looks pretty good. This is something that you guys, when you're showing and when you're listing a house, these old fashioned grip blocks are pretty much worthless. And most people don't ever even have them up next to them so that the water coming out of the downspout hits in there and gets exited out. But these are typically only about 3 feet long. This needs to be like a 6-foot extension and get it away from the edge of the house. And sometimes people will try to trick you and they'll put on their extensions right before they list the house, but you've got sunken soils all the way around the house and you know that they've had nothing there or one of these grip blocks there for many years, especially in older homes. You don't find these anymore. Nothing there. There was nothing there. We'll get down to the basement, which is where we had an issue. What he's showing here is a negative grade towards the house, which when you look at homes, I'd say 80s, early 80s, and then older, a lot of the times the lots were built on they were flat. They didn't have any grading away from the house, and then as rain and snow fell over the years, you start getting a negative grade that leans towards the house, and it can become an issue. In a good market or a strong seller's market, if you ask the seller to make this a positive grade, they're going to tell you no. It's something when I'm showing a house, I point it out to the buyers that this is something that they're probably going to want to fix. You want to have roughly 1 inch for every, I think it's 1 inch of grade for every 2 feet, something like that. But you want just the water to flow away. With new homes now, they always build the houses so that there's a positive drainage away from the foundation. And you can't interrupt that drainage at all, or you'll void your warranty on the foundation. Somewhat of a newer, I can't remember. No, this was not a newer, but it's a General Electric. It's a big panel. And you can see that the wiring was all pretty good. Nothing what they call double tap. Once in a while, your inspector will see maybe 2 wires come into the same screw here, and that's called double tapping. But you're not going to see that unless you opened up the panel, which I wouldn't suggest you open up panels, the inside of the panel, when you're looking at houses, because you don't want to cause any problems. Let's go further down here. Let's see. It's coming, I know it is. Nothing wrong there. Okay, this was a problem. This is why my buyer just got out of the deal. This is a support beam for you can see this big beam here, and this support beam, okay, is underneath that, and it's crooked. And we plumbed it, and it's that much off. Okay, that's 2 inches. They allow up to a 1/2 inch. This was quite a bit, and you could not see the other 2 beams in the house. But, the support beams, but chances are they were off too. Now, do I think that that was a big deal? Somewhat, because yes, it's crooked, and this beam is not straight up and down like it should be. They were not comfortable with it. They did not even want to pursue going forward, having the seller try to remediate that, which they probably wouldn't have. But that was their just cause to get out of the contract, and they did. Which some people say is silly. They didn't feel it was silly. I talked to my structural engineer. I sent him the photos, and he said it's definitely a problem, and you would probably want to get that fixed over a period of time if they didn't fix it. And he said, it could run anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 to get that taken care of. So just another thing, in the 30+ years I've done this, that's the first time I've seen these support poles that far off.
What do they have to do to fix that?
I don't know exactly. Yeah, because you'd have to probably take that pole out and reinsert it, and that's gonna take some work. And it's according to how far off, because there's another pole on to the other side of this picture, or 2, and there's one more that we couldn't see behind us. So it's just according. Something when you're looking at a house, do you know what this, and this is a good idea just for around your house. Do you know what this is on a hot water heater? It's
Pressure relief.
Yeah, it's a pressure relief valve. Okay, there should be either a copper or a plastic pipe down within an inch or so of the ground like that. So that, and what this is for is if there are enough pressure built up in the hot water heater that it has to release, it will release scalding hot water out of there. And once in a while, you'll see them that they don't have these pipes on there. And if you happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, that will burn the hell out of you. This little valve here, you can lift up and release the pressure, but what it should allow it to do is if there is something that comes out, it'll just exit down, and it should be next to a drain that's down in the basement floor, which this was. This is your leaded pipe for gas. This is your shut off here for the gas. Notice it's in line. But they're gonna look at all these connections in an inspection and make sure these are legal to use. Sometimes people will put in stuff that they shouldn't be using because they do the plumbing themselves, and they're,
Copper pipe, yes.
yeah. Yep, they'll put in plastic sometimes. This is your main shut off. This is your pressure valve inside the house. In older homes, you're gonna find, like this one, that they didn't always float the walls on the concrete floor. This part is floated a little bit, and by floating, I mean they have a 2x4 or a 2x6 that's elevated off the ground, and then they have another one above it. And the reason they build the walls that way is so that the ground could shift some and not push the upper floor, push on that 2x4 and start pushing walls upstairs. In older homes, though, you find that even though they didn't do a soil sample for every single lot, they poured concrete and were very good at what they did. Even in like the old Promac homes up in North Glen or South Glen or anywhere you find the old Promac homes, they did a great job typically pouring concrete and not having issues with moving soils like they do nowadays. And we are building in areas that are, you know, and especially when you get along 470 on the east and west side down towards Ken Carroll. There's some really bad soils down in that area and other areas are right around our office here. Newer furnace. You know, a little bit of rust that showed up there, not a big deal, but they're gonna point out everything to you. Your air conditioners should be on some kind of level ground and or they should have something like, this is I think they're made out of fiberglass. This is something that you typically will set the air conditioner on. I have seen some air conditioners that were tilted at like a 30-degree angle that obviously is not going to allow for it to operate in an efficient manner, to say the least. So it's just something you look at. Then you can look at the floors and make sure that everything is looking good. One thing that an inspector is always going to verify, and I don't think they have a picture here. Oh, you'll notice that on this one, there is no, this camera is, well, not camera, this lens is 17 inches off. This should be down around 6 inches. What this is for if something crawls through there or passes underneath there while the garage door is coming down, it would automatically stop the garage door and lift it back up. So this is supposed to be down and around, I think, the 6-inch range. And you should be able to, as the garage door is coming down, put your hands underneath it and hold onto it and it'll automatically kick back up. Obviously, that's for a child or an animal or something. They don't want to get crushed. And so that can be adjusted on the garage door itself. Typically, there are a couple of nuts on the side that you can see that show it. This is an emergency release handle in case the electricity goes off, you can pull that and allow the garage door to go down. Okay, just so you know. Up in the attic, good insulation. He's pointing out again there that the concrete extensions don't do much, bad soil. So, any questions on anything on that one? Is this helping you to learn some of this stuff?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yes, definitely.
What was that?
Definitely.
Oh, good. Let's see.
Yeah, that's definitely helping.
Good. Here's a house I sold to a veteran a year ago, or yeah, just about a year ago. And a veteran lived there. And unbelievably, this house had one smoke detector in the whole house and no CO detector. So we ended up asking for those, which they were reluctant, but they did it. I was like, really, you're reluctant? By law, you have to have the CO detectors for sure.
I had the same thing happen with that body I just had.
The what?
I would refuse to replace them.
Really?
Yeah,
Whatever.
yeah.
Yeah, people get sneaky. This house really didn't have a lot, but one thing that it did have is this was a second chimney that was for the basement. And they had just sealed it off because they didn't ever want to build another fireplace, which you could. But that's something that can be a problem. This is drainage, obviously. This separates a little bit here, can cause water to spill. Not a huge deal, but it's just stuff that you can point out. This shows that there was probably a leak in this gutter system and it was dripping out. If you have a bad leak in the gutters, you'll a lot of times get this fascia board and this soffit board underneath will become stained, or it may hang down, it may just fall apart. It offers a way for critters to get up in there and be an issue. Let's see. Here's the mast I was talking about for the electrical panels. So sometimes, like I said, the mast may only come up a couple of feet from the old service, or sometimes the wire used to come in underneath the soffit, which is not allowed anymore because somebody can reach up and grab that line, which will give them a rude awakening. Another good panel of wiring, and you notice how the wire's looped, it's not squared off. No issues there at all. One thing that you see quite a bit is people will replace their garbage disposal, and they don't know what they're doing. And they may plumb it incorrectly. It can sometimes cause the water to back up and go into the dishwasher area. This one was a little bit off, not bad, but he pointed that out to them. No real problems here. So we'll go on to another house. Cause I try to only sell homes that are in good shape, but you don't always, right? 4th Street, Johnstown. This one is a good one to view because we did have some issues here in the basement. This was an older veteran. I sold him and his wife a house up in Johnstown this year. Now, remember I was talking about that first roofing that I showed you that was in awful shape, that didn't have vents? These are what you call the turtle vents. These are roughly, should be on the roofing and should be about for every 150 square feet or so of attic space. They allow for the attic to be vented and cooled off so that the roofing does not bake from underneath and start curling like that first roofing I showed you that was so bad. But that roofing was in good shape, just a little area here where this needed a splash guard. Had a little bit of seeping there, but you know, they point out pretty much everything. I'm gonna get to the basement because this is where we had some problems. You notice that these window wells are huge. And what that does afford is water from rainstorms or snowstorms to build up down there, especially if you get a big cloudburst of rain or whatever. And you'll notice that through a period of years, the soil has sunk around there, which is common. Yeah, that was a lot of people, they don't pay any attention to their downspouts. It'll cause water to build up, could run off and go into that window well. And what happens if that window well starts gathering water? It will leak into the house. And that actually occurred on this house to their surprise, because this house was vacant for a few months while they were selling it. And we noticed some problems, so I'm going to get to that part. So this is downstairs on the south side. And I noticed this window was fogged up, and then I noticed sand here. And water had infiltrated in through this window well and a couple other window wells. Well, where there's water, there's moisture, and where there's moisture, there can be mold. So when we put a moisture meter on this part of the carpet, and you can kind of see the line of moisture, this was soaking wet. Okay? You wouldn't necessarily think that, but it was all the way wet and around into this closet. And I don't think I have any more pictures. No, I don't, but
Any foundation issues yet?
no, there was no foundation issues that we could tell by any means. But this also is a family room on the other side of this bedroom wall. And there's two more window wells out there, and both window wells had flowed over into the family room and into this bedroom. And so they had to pull back the carpet, dry it out, and reattach it, and they measured to make sure there was no mold, and cleaned it up. It cost the seller probably another $4,000. And we also asked for some monies, because my people were paying cash, but they asked for a credit of $5,000 so they could get some custom window well covers made for those big window wells. Now, these were on the south side, and that can be a fairly common area. When they're that big, you're gonna collect water no matter what side of the house they are. But the sides you really wanna pay attention to are the north sides and the west sides, because most of our storms come from the northwest. And when you get into the window wells, you know, anywhere, any size, they're gonna have a tendency to collect water. Some window wells in newer homes have drains in them, some do not. And so if you want a built-in aquarium, don't cover them, and you can have fish out there. Your goldfish will be very happy, but it's something to be aware of. And at this time, when I was selling in this house, we were having quite a few rainstorms. And fortunately, it occurred between the time we looked at the house the first time and did the inspection is when this occurred. So we made sure to make the listing agent aware, and she was going up to check the house after every rainstorm to make sure there was nothing else happening and to make sure that we were okay. Radon mitigation system. Nothing much else was really a factor in this house, other than that potential issue there with the water intruding into the house. So that is, I think, enough to give you an idea of, and like I said at the beginning, I know Valerie's not on this anymore. I go to every inspection for two reasons. I want to learn. Yes, I'm old and I want to still learn. And I want to make sure that my clients are comfortable when the inspector says, we've got a problem here, here's an issue, and help them to understand what the inspector is trying to tell them, and what could be a cure, and what could be a potential that we want to ask for the seller to fix, and to make them feel comfortable, because I don't want to send them off and they come back and go, oh my God, Bob, that house is a disaster. Well, hopefully you see enough things when you're showing the house to know that it's maybe not a disaster, or there are potential issues that could come up in the inspection and that we want to point out to the seller that we want fixed or whatever. But going to inspections, you learn a tremendous amount about houses. And like I said, whether it's a resale or it's a used home, you're going to learn something. Promise you, right? Kathy's been in the business now, what, 8 years or so, Kathy? And I know you've learned a tremendous amount.
Absolutely. I think it's important that when you go to these inspections, you don't act like you're the inspector. You're just there to learn and keep your clients from maybe
Freaking out.
reacting.
Right, so just as an example, that last house, when the inspector was upstairs still, and I walked downstairs and was looking, and I went and saw that window sill had dirt on it, and then I looked at the window was moist. I knew that there had been some water issues, so I went upstairs and said, when you get down here, Tom, I gotta point something out to you, because I think we have a problem, and sure enough, it was. But I didn't go, oh my God, we've got a problem and we need to get out of this deal. you know, there's a way to fix it. So, and my people were happy, they wanted a ranch style house, they were moving from I think it was a 50-acre ranch up in Wyoming. And had to move down to be close to the kids, because they're 80 years old. And they wanted the house, but also wanted it to be in good shape and safe for them. So, you know, you wanna remember that everybody is counting on you to help them figure out what's the best way to proceed, right? And like Kathy said, don't be the inspector, don't be afraid to point things out that you think might be a problem, but you know, you're not there to try to figure out if the electrical panel is 200 amp or what it is. Although you may learn some things by going on these inspections, right? Another thing just about air conditioning, evaporative coolers can be a big issue for insurance because you have a bunch of water up on the rooftop, and if it starts leaking, it can get into the house. And it's also, if your people have problems with any kind of allergies, then evaporative coolers can be somewhat of a detriment to them. So you may point that out, you know, first thing when you're showing a house, if it's got evaporative cooler, ask them, do you guys tend to have any problem with allergies? Yes, we do. Okay, well, we have evaporative cooling system here, and this lends itself to kind of being an issue for that. But we can discuss more on that or read up on it on YouTube or whatever. You know, you can Google anything anymore, whereas 30 years ago, I couldn't Google anything. I had to go to my Encyclopedia Britannica to try to find out. And they didn't have it. So that is that for this class, you guys. Any questions or anything you want to ask or talk about? And don't forget, anytime you guys are out showing, or if you've shown a property and you have questions, you know, get in touch with me. I'll be glad to help you out the best I can and help guide you through something. Right? That it?
Thank you.
So,
Nothing but a drum roll. Have a good one.
quick question, Bob.
Go sell homes. Go sell, right?
Somebody has a question.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I have a question. So I know most of these things are going to come through like experience, and considering that I'm pretty new, like it's something that like I'm very excited to like learn from these inspections. Is there anything specifically that you're looking for, like in your first walkthrough, that you're like keeping an eye out, like whenever you're doing these inspections, or is it kind of like as they come and go type of situations?
When I'm showing, one of the main things I look at right off the bat, and Jeff knows this because he's been with me. Kathy, I can't remember, but I look at the house overall and the drainage of it and see, like in a 1950s home, lots were very flat. And I want to see if the seller has had downspout extensions, and just making sure that overall they don't have trees or shrubs right up next to the house. Around the foundation. So I look at that. I also look at the location as if it's located on a street, like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ward Road, just to the north of 64th, but it goes up a very steep hill and then down a very steep hill. If you're showing a house that is at the bottom of that hill, it's gonna have water issues probably in the basement, or even halfway down that hill. Anytime you're on a street that is steep, the house down here is gonna have more problems than the house at the top, 9 times out of 10. Just simply because where does water go? Downhill. My structural engineer, who I'm going to have, he's going to help me with a class in the next month or two because he loves coming here. He always talks about, you know, the only problem with the house is they build it outside. And you've got water. You always have issues with water. Water is a house's #1 enemy. And you have to keep water away from the foundation, whether it's a foundation or it's a crawl space. So that's one of the main things I look at, and I look at roofing and things like that. But, and then just as you go through, just, you know, in your mind, looking for things, and I jot things down a lot of times when I'm showing, just to make sure that I remember about those in case we write on the house and go under contract that we want to bring up. And I bring it up to the buyers before we ever even have an inspection. Okay,
Awesome. Thank you.
you're welcome. Is that it? Let's
Yeah,
go.
that's all it on my part. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Bob.
Mr. Multiple Closer, how are you?
Good.
You got anything else working now?
No, but I am working on
Good
it
for you.
actively,
Actively,
very actively.
profusely?
Since I just started my year and I collected those two, I'm looking forward to a cap.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. So when I grew up at like 92nd and Federal, Sunset Ridge area,
Mhm.
and our house was built in 66. And whenever it rained, the window wells would fill up. You'd have to go outside with buckets
The
and
buckets.
take the water out. I hated when it rained.
Yeah, my brother, not in this state, but in my home state of South Dakota, he had a window well and they built a deck over the window well and it did that same thing.
Ah.
So he had to completely remove the deck.
Oh,
I mean, he put thousands of dollars in this deck.
oh my goodness.
And, yeah, he had a fishbowl, he had a big
Yeah,
fishbowl.
And then it would come in, it would start,
Oh, yeah, just.
coming in and down the
luckily-
walls.
Luckily, he had an unfinished basement, but still, yeah. Yeah, it was just this total nightmare. I was like,
oh yeah, between the window wells and then they've lived there since 66, so that water heater has gone out at least 3 times. So you have that leaking everywhere. I mean, it's pretty solid house, actually,
yeah.
and they got the water all up, but they have carpet down, I mean, just.
I personally owned a Victoria in the Highlands, and I had two it's the house itself wasn't actually outside the water, because when we first moved in, Sprung was all sloped towards it, and
Right.
right like the day after we bought the place, we fixed that to get it away, because it had foundation issues too, but it was 1880 home.
Yeah, it's full.
Yeah, so anyway, yeah.
1880, that's older than me.
Wow.
So it's, and the, one winter, it was super cold. It was one of those winters, just bitter, nasty cold, like January, February kind of thing like that. And then it started warming up, and the boiler system, it froze the pipe. And
Oh, no.
And when it finally warmed up, it started flooding the house and nobody was home at the time.
Oh, my.
And so it poured like, and hot water too, it's super hot water. It poured it all over the house for like 10 hours. And there's no drain in the basement.
Yeah.
And so insurance paid for everything?
Yeah, it was like $50,000 claim,
Oh, my
How many?
goodness.
50. It was
50?
50, we had to replace the hardwood floor, all main level, we had to,
Drywall.
drywall, it destroyed the boiler in the hot water tank
Oh, my
in
God.
the basement, God, what else did it do? It was just numerous things like that, and then 4 years later, one of my kids had flushed the toilet upstairs, it was clogged. And then the flapper, for whatever reason, caught up. And we left and nobody did it, and the same thing again, this time we went to the kitchen. And we had to replace all the sheetrock and some cabinets and the half bath completely got, we had to be gutted.
And then your insurance company dropped you.
Oh, the razor was like stupid after that,
Time to move.
yeah.
Wow. Older house, older houses are nice, but you gotta have a lot of money,
But you got, yeah.
Well, and then the start of this house too, was when we bought. My ex-mother-in-law, she said, hey, is there been a fire over here? And they're like, no. And couldn't find out, there was a fire when they were there, but the prior owners had covered up a fire. I think they knew, honestly, but they just.
they didn't disclose it.
Disclose it all. But anyway, so then we're at, like 24 hours into the house and there, and my 7-foot closet tub in the bathroom upstairs. Big tub.
Huge.
So my ex got in the tub and had it totally full of water and was getting into it, and I was in the kitchen and the steam started to like. And I'm like, and I go running upstairs and I'm like, get out of the tub, pull the plug of the waters. As you get out, you know, because it was like, it looked like it was gonna come through kind of thing.
It's like the money pit.
Oh, it totally was. So anyway, I popped a hole in the sheetrock, because there had broke the sheetrock and stuff like that. And we luckily the laughing plaster, it was somebody along the way, that completely gutted the laughing plaster out of the house. It was just sheetrock everywhere. And we wired it correctly, which surprised the shit out of me, but, so anyway, I ripped a hole in the sheetrock. And I go look up there, and it's like, it's black.
Oh, no.
And I'm like, what the?
You have mold.
No.
No?
So I went to go and I got a little, and I was, yeah, I was on a really short ladder, and I got a little wobbly, so I went to grab one of the joists to hold, support me, and it just fucking crumbles my hand. So we had a fire inspector come in then, because we figured out it was a fire, pretty obviously it was a fire at that point. And the fire